Welcome to Freedom Lovin'. This is Kevin, and this is episode number 9. And today I'm actually flying solo. I don't have a guest on the show, but I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the chapters in the Harry Browne book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and that is on the identity trap, specifically how it relates to happiness. So I'll have that in just a second, but I just want to give a couple updates. Tonight I'm going to be headed to the World Domination Summit, and that's Chris Guillebeau's event, and you may have heard of him. He has written a book called The Art of Nonconformity, which fits perfectly into my lifestyle and this podcast and the website. And he also has a book called The $100 Startup. I think he's 35 now, and he's visited every country in the world. So he's set foot on the soil of every country that exists today in the world. So that's pretty impressive, and it's something that I don't think I'll ever do, but I really admire what he's been able to do in his young life. So the event it's in Portland, Oregon, and it's going to be over 3 days. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm actually going to Portland, and I'm not going to attend the event, but I'm going to be around for all the various after parties and lunches and dinners and events that are going on. In fact, on Friday, there is a attempt to set a world record in Portland that I am going to be a part of. It's going to be really interesting. The most number of people on inner tubes connected. So, I don't know, it sounds pretty crazy. I'm sure I'll have pictures and I'll put them up on freedomlovin.com if I can get a hold of any. But yeah, I'll be famous in that respect, and that's kind of fun. Otherwise, I will just be networking and having fun with a lot of people that are kind of doing a lot of the same type of things that I'm doing, which is traveling and working, living in various places, and being able to earn income at the same time. So you can call them digital nomads or location-independent entrepreneurs or mobile business owners or whatever. But there's going to be a lot of them. I think there's 3,000 people going, so it should be a really, really fun time, and should be able to make a lot of connections, a lot of great connections. And then also just wanted to mention that I appeared on the Nomad Capitalist Report a week ago or so, and the episode's going to be out, I believe, in about a week. So it's a website called nomadcapitalist.com, and he's got a weekly show that he just interviews a lot of people that are talking about freedom-related issues and business ideas and really interesting stuff. I mean, he's kind of a broad range of guests, and you can tune in, and it's like he's on the radio also, but it's a podcast, and I download the episodes and listen to them when I can. And so, yeah, that'll be coming up soon, and I'll have that posted on the Facebook page, so facebook.com/freedomlovinglife. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's about it, so I will get right into the identity trap and happiness from How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And I'm actually going to be reading a chapter, or part of a chapter, from the website ultimatefreedomquest.com, which has most of the Harry Browne book, the How I Found Freedom book. It's all there, and all the traps are laid out as blog posts, so it's really easy to read. So chapter 2 is where this appears, and it's the identity trap. Happiness is what you feel inside of you as a result of the things that happen to you. Happiness isn't a new car, fame, a good marriage, wealth, or a warm blanket. Those are things. Happiness is what you feel inside of you as a result of the things that happen to you. Happiness might be produced by a good marriage, fame, a new car, or a warm blanket. For some people, happiness occurs as a result of doing favors for other people. For others, it results from bringing about social reforms. And for still others, it comes from believing they've outsmarted someone. Happiness is an emotion, an involuntary reaction to what happens to you. And unhappiness is an involuntary feeling of discomfort as you react to the things that don't suit your nature. To change your mental state from unhappiness to happiness requires that you change your circumstances. And this is why you do things, to bring about the circumstances that will make you happier. Everything you do is motivated by the desire to feel as much happiness as possible and to eliminate mental discomfort, either in the short term or the long term. A positive decision is one which you choose among alternatives to maximize your happiness. An example would be deciding whether you'll be happier going to a movie or a football game. A negative decision is one in which you choose among alternatives to minimize your unhappiness. An example would be deciding whether to let your roof leak or to deplete your savings account to get it fixed. Neither choice will increase your happiness. You're trying to decide which choice would be the least unpleasant. A free person spends most of his time making positive decisions, choosing among attractive alternatives. So your identity. What makes you happy will depend upon your own personal nature, which is different in many ways from that of any other human being. To try to find happiness by doing what seems to make others happy is to fall headfirst into the identity trap. Others can suggest what you should do or what ought to make you happy, but they will often be wrong. You have to determine for yourself who you are, what makes you happy, what you're capable of doing, and what you want to do. Be open to suggestions, but never forfeit the power to make the final decision yourself. Only then can you act in ways that will bring you happiness. You're in the identity trap when you let others determine what's right or wrong for you, when you live by unquestioned rules that define how you should act and think. Avoiding the trap. There are 4 basic principles whose recognition can help to avoid the identity trap. 1. You are a unique individual, different from all other human beings. No one else has the exact same nature that you have. No one else reacts to things in exactly the way you do. No one else sees the world exactly as you do. No one can dictate what your identity should be. You are the best qualified person to discover what this is. 2. Each individual is acting from his own knowledge in ways he believes will bring him happiness. He acts to produce the consequences that he thinks will make him feel better. 3. You have to treat things and people in accordance with their own identities in order to get what you want from them. You don't expect a stone to be a fish, and it's just as unrealistic to expect one person to act as someone else does. You don't control the identities of people, but you can control how you deal with them. 4. You view the world subjectively, colored by your own experience, interpretation, and limits of perception. It isn't essential that you know the final truth about everything in the world, and you don't have the resources to discover it. Instead, the test to be applied to any idea is, does it work? Does your identification of things lead to the consequences that you expect? If it does, what you perceived was true enough in that situation. But recognize the context of the situation and be skeptical when generalizing from that test to draw broader conclusions. Until you discover and accept yourself fully, you won't have the conviction or the courage to be free. Amen. I think that's a great passage because it really tells you what you need to do to be free, and that's not free in the sense of political freedom, but more in the sense of personal freedom in your own life and kind of how you're viewing things. And you could be financially free, you could even be free from governments and free from everything else, but if you are kind of caught in this identity trap, you're really not free. So, and my experience with this is that doing what I want to do is often actually hard because there's this kind of nagging feeling that I'm not doing what I should do because everyone around me isn't doing that. So for me, it's a lot of it is kind of the way I set up my life, where I have internet businesses that are my source of income, so I can travel, I can move around, and it's not an issue, but it feels weird sometimes because not many people do this. Not many people kind of go about life this way. Like I just came to Boulder, Colorado recently knowing nobody, and I don't have family here, I don't have friends, and a lot of times people would ask me, why are you going there? Do you have family? Do you have friends? And it sort of feels like maybe they're right. Maybe I'm doing this weird thing that is unhealthy for me. But when I do these things and they turn out to be things that I enjoy and that I like, then I realize that I am actually doing what I want to do, and I'm kind of breaking through the social kind of conditioning and the social pressures to do what I want. But it's not an easy thing. I'm often fighting this urge to do what everyone else is doing, and I've done that in the past. Like, for example, I got married, and I didn't think much about the idea of marriage. I didn't think about, is that what I wanted? Is that something that I agree with, that I believe in? I just thought it was something you do in life, and it's sort of like you graduate from college, and you graduate from high school, you graduate from college, and then at some point you get married, and at some point you have kids, and so I really had to rethink all of these things and think, do I want this? Do I want this? Do I want to be married? And it's a really tough thing because everyone around you is going to be kind of pressuring you into these type of things, and so again, it's not easy to always make these decisions, but if you want to raise your happiness levels, it's much more life-affirming It's much more happiness inducing if you're making those decisions that are truly in line with what you want. So I think it's really important to sit down and actually think about this stuff and even write some of it down in terms of what you want and what society says, and see if maybe it's aligned. Maybe you want some of the things that everyone around you is doing for some reason. So that's something that I think everyone should do, and not many people do it. Most people just kind of walk through life blindly and just do what everyone around them is doing, and they kind of live a life of not so much happy, but maybe not so much sad, but just sort of mediocre. And so, you have to really weigh everything and see if that's what you want. And another thing is just even having a job. I mean, everyone thinks that you should have a job. If you don't have a job, there's something wrong. So, and since 2004, 2005, I really haven't had a job. And that's been kind of an odd thing. I've had a business, I've had multiple businesses, but none of them are jobs. And it's funny because most of the places you go and someone says, what do you do? They expect this job. They expect you to say whatever your job is. So if you have an internet business, you can start describing that. A lot of people won't understand it. But for me, I just say I'm a perpetual traveler. And then they don't know most people don't know what to ask after that, or they're really interested and curious and wondering what that is. So that's just another way that it's tough to go against the grain and do things, it goes back to the art of nonconformity. When you're along this path, there are a lot of these things that you have to decide, do you want to kind of fit in with the crowd, or do you want to do something that's kind of a little bit risky and putting yourself out there and not along the norms, and you're pretty much every day having to, have conversations with people that are, possibly a little bit awkward for them because they don't know what to say, and maybe awkward for you because it's so, you kind of want to fit in, you want to relate to people and have connections and things like that. So there's that. And then, there's also some little things, like I was listening to, there's a podcast I listen to a lot that gives ideas on mindset for business. And he was making a point, one of the guys on the podcast was making a point about money, and he just threw in, and he wasn't specifically talking about taxes, but he said, yeah, it's not like I'm trying to avoid taxes. I'm happy to pay taxes. I live in a great country. It's free. It's clean. It's, everyone's working. And so, and that's interesting because this guy is very, very, very successful. He's at the top of his industry, and he's making a lot of money. I think he has a house on the beach. He may have multiple houses. And yet he says, no problem, take half my money away, and I'm happy with that. Doesn't think about it too much. For me, that would... Even at that level, I'm still not happy giving away half my money that I earned to somebody that I don't even know. So there's very different ways to look at things, and even money itself. There's a lot of people out there that are extremely rich, and yet they're not able to find happiness. They're not able to be satisfied or content. And they're always on this path of they got to get better and better and better and make more and more money, and they can't kind of be satisfied with where they are right now. And an example of that was the Steve Jobs book. I read the Steve Jobs book, I think a year ago, and he was a guy that he made so much money in his life, but he never seemed to be happy or satisfied. It was always there was some sort of dissatisfaction with everything, and maybe that was what drove him. Maybe that was what drove him to make better products. But at the same time, would you rather have all the money in the world, have millions of dollars, or would you rather have a life where you have financial freedom and you can do what you want, you can buy the things you want, and you have happiness, but you're not a multimillionaire? So, I think for me, that's a pretty obvious choice. And it kind of goes back to the minimalism approach, which is just owning the things that you absolutely need and not being too caught up in being attached to things that are just things and don't actually bring you happiness. So, and if you wanted to hear more about minimalism, I interviewed Ryan Nicodemus of theminimalists.com, and that was on episode 7. So that was a couple episodes ago. So you can go back, and I'll have a link to that in this show notes. So that's about all I had today, just the identity trap and happiness, and I hope that you're out there and not in one of these traps, and that you are finding happiness and you're creating some freedom. And I'd love to hear from you as the listener. I've heard from a few people, but it'd be great to hear more. And the one thing that you can do to help would be awesome is if you can go right now to the iTunes listing for this podcast for Freedom Lovin' and just give me a rating and a review, or just a rating if you don't have time to write a review is all good. That would really help get the word out. And also, if you have any comments, that would be great. I have a Facebook page. It's facebook.com/freedomlovinlife. And we've got a lot of good discussions going on there. And you can check in, and I'd love to hear from you. Just put your comments in the comments box there. And yeah, I'd love to know what you're doing as well. And like I said, I'm working on some things to help people make some passive income, some income that you can earn from anywhere. And this is just to get started, to get your feet wet. And it'll be easy to start, no cost or anything like that. And I'll have more information on this soon, hopefully next week, if not the week after. But I'll have all these links in the show notes. Just go to freedomlovin.com and hit this episode. This is episode number 9 on the podcast. And yeah, then click on the link there and we're good to go. So that's about it. Next week, I have Jake DeCilius of The Voluntary Life on the show. It's going to be a really interesting podcast. I can't wait to talk to him. He's doing some exciting things, and he's traveling around the world, and he's got a great philosophy. So that'll be in about a week. So hope you're doing well out there. Go out there and build some freedom, and we'll talk to you soon.